All right, so for this game, we have what is effectively just a sequencing game. So we have these 5 positions to work with, and we have 5 elements to put into those positions. So it's 1-to-1, nothing really especially out of the ordinary. We have Q, R, S, T, and V. And from there, I suppose, let's take a look at the rules. So the first rule says that R has to go either into 1 or 2. So I suppose that's good to know. We can leave a reminder here that R has to go into one of these 2 positions. Next, we are told that T has to go into either 1 or 5. And same thing, we can just leave a reminder here that T has to go into one of these 2, except, actually, so there's a bit of interplay between these 2 already, right? Because if R is in 1, then that would force T to go into 5. But then if R is in 2, I guess T can still go either way. Anyways, yeah, let's keep going. Third rule tells us that the third house has to be either Q or V, so that's also pretty good. Q or V would have to go into the third position, and we can leave this over here just to reserve that spot. Next, we are told that Q cannot go immediately next to S. So wait a minute, if Q can't go next to S, so we know Q is one of the 2 people that can go into 3, right? So if this was a Q, then I suppose S would have to go into 1 or 5, but then so does T. So that would kind of lock out the 1 and 5 positions. That's actually pretty good. And if V was in here, I suppose that's probably going to be a little bit more flexible. Q and S, I guess, are not going to be together. In fact, this rule, they're not together. But you know what? Yeah, let's exhaust this based on that third position, because especially if we put a Q here, it's pretty significant. So we can either have a Q here or we can have a V there. Now, in this top scenario, if we put a Q into number 3, as we said, Q and S don't play nice. So S is going to have to go either into 1 or 5, as will T. So 1 and 5 are just going to be S and T splitting out, which now means that R has to go into 2, since R has to go into the first 2, and that leaves us with V. V will have to go into 4, so that's pretty good. Now, in the bottom scenario, if V is here, then yeah, I suppose Q and S are not going to be next to each other, so they can't be together here, they can't be together there. So what will happen then between Q and S is we're basically going to have to spread them out between the 2 sides, right? We'll have to have one of Q or S on one side, and then the other one's going to have to go on the other side. Except wait, whoever's here is going to have to be here with R, right? Because R is going to take up one of these 2 spots, and then Q or S will take up the other one. So effectively, that means that this is done. There's nobody else that can go into these positions. So T is going to have to fall onto this side. In fact, T will have to go into 5 with the other of Q or S. So that's pretty good. And then on this side, I guess we can just leave a reminder. We're going to have R / and then the other of Q or S in one of those 2 positions. So that's actually a really good place to start. Yeah, let's go with this. So to the questions themselves. So we don't have an exclusion question, so we're just going to do question number 7. If Q goes 4th, well, right away, if Q is 4th, that would force you into this second template, and then this would be a Q, and then S and R are still just going to flip between 1 and 2. We can probably, in fact, do this mentally. So Q would have to go here, and once again, S and R are just going to flip between positions 1 and 2. Let's see what we can do. The question asks, which of the following must happen? A, R is in 1, and it doesn't have to. Those guys can still flip. R is in 2, same thing. R and S can still flip. Next, S is second, same deal. We're not 100%. Answer choice D, T is first, and no, that couldn't happen. And E, V is third, and yes, if Q was 4th, then V would have had to be in 3. So the best answer to question number 7 is E. Next, question number, I guess the next local question is number 9, which says if S is going before Q, so let's line that up. If we have S before Q, what does that mean for us? Well, I suppose that is arguably consistent with both of these templates, right? In the top template, S would have to go here, and then Q goes here. And on the bottom template, S would have to go somewhere over here, and Q would go somewhere over there. You know what, again, we could play out both scenarios on paper, but let's see, maybe we can do this mentally. So you just want to keep in mind that in both of these templates, both of them are in play, but you would have to have the S before the Q. Let's see, the question itself asks, what would have to be true? Answer choice A, Q goes fourth. And no, because we could have S before Q with Q in third, so that doesn't have to be true. Answer choice B, R goes second, and not necessarily, because here we could have had S in 2 before Q in 4, and R could have just as easily flipped to 1. Answer choice C, S goes first. And no, because we just said we could have had S in over here, so S doesn't have to go first. Answer choice D, T goes fifth. Actually, yeah, it seems like it does either way. So in both of these scenarios, in both of these templates, if S is before Q, so in the first template, S would go here before Q, but then T would go 5. And in the second template, T is permanently in 5. So yes, answer choice D would work. T would have to go into 5. Either way you go, best answer to number 9 is D. Next, number 11 is our next local, which says, if V goes third, well, that's great, because if V goes third, that just locks us into this template right here. So we don't have to do anything else. Everything else is literally going to be the same as it seems right here. So the question now asks, what would have to be true? Answer choice A, Q goes fourth, and it could, but we don't necessarily know that. B, R goes second. Again, no, R can flip back and forth between 1 and 2. Next, S goes first, same problem. Next, S goes fourth. Again, no, because this could have been a Q just as easily, so that doesn't have to be true. E, T goes fifth, and yeah, it does. T would have to go fifth in that scenario. Best answer to question number 11 is E. Next, back to the global questions. Question number 8, we've got essentially what would lock down the game completely as far as the order is concerned. So answer choice A, Q goes third. Now, if Q is third, you'll notice that that would force you into the top template, but S and T will still be able to flip back and forth, so that wouldn't be enough to completely lock everything. Answer choice B, R goes first. Now, if R goes first, you'll notice that could happen over here, where R is first, but Q and S will still be able to flip, so that wouldn't be enough to lock everything. Answer choice C, S goes second. Ooh, that's kind of good, isn't it? Because if S goes second, that would force you into the second template, because that's the only one where S can go second. And if this is S, that would force R into 1, and this would have to be a Q, and that does it. So the best answer to question number 8 is C. That would lock down the game. Just in case, though, let's take a look at the rest. Answer choice D, T goes fifth. Now you'll notice that in both of these templates, T could have gone fifth, which means that there's at least 2 major templates that would work that would not lock the game completely. Answer choice E, V goes fourth, and that does happen in the top template, but you'll notice that S and T can still flip between 1 and 5, so that wouldn't have been enough to lock the game. Once again, best answer to number 8 is C. Next, question number 10, which of the following could be true? Answer choice A, Q goes first. Could we have Q go first? And no, it doesn't. Actually, no, wait, we could. So in this template over here, couldn't we have Q over here and then R over here and then S would go there? And yeah, that seems pretty legit. So answer choice A, that looks like that would work. Best answer to number 10 is A. Just in case, though, let's take a look at the rest. Could we have Q in 5? And no, you'll notice that in both templates, there's never an opportunity for Q5. Answer choice C, V1. And no, in fact, we kind of have V already locked either in 4 or 3, so that would never happen. Answer choice D, V2. No, same problem. We already know where the V's go, and it's not there. Answer choice E, V5, same thing. Once again, best answer was A. Next, number 12. So here we're trying to replace one of these rules. Specifically, we're trying to replace the rule that says that R would have had to go either into 1 or 2. So just as a reminder, for this kind of question, we're looking for something that a good answer choice is going to be something that always had to be true the entire time, and something that, if we implemented it, would have ensured that R will go first or second. Let's see what we can do. Answer choice A, R cannot go fourth. Now, to be fair, that's true. R could never go fourth because it had to go into either 1 or 2, right? But the real question becomes, if we implement this as a rule, if we say that R cannot go 4, would that force it to go into 1 or 2? Now, to be fair, it would never be able to go into 3 anyways, because that's going to have to be Q or V. But what about 5? If we didn't have this rule in place, then, at least theoretically, wouldn't we have been able to put the R over here in the 5th position rather easily? And then T could go first, and Q and S could flip between 2 and 4, and then V would go third. So yeah, the thing is, answer choice A doesn't do enough. Saying that R cannot go 4th would not ensure that it has to go into 1 or 2. It would still allow for it to go 5th. So A is out. B, R must be before V. Now again, technically that's true. R has always been before V in both of these scenarios. V went later. But the real question becomes, if we implement this as a rule that R has to go before V, would it ensure that R is going to go into 1 or 2? Now, to be fair, if you say that R is before V, that would prevent it from going into 5, which is nice, right? Because R before V means that R can't go 5th. And it's already prevented from going into 3 because it has to be either Q or V there. So the real question becomes, would this rule have allowed for R to go into 4th? And arguably couldn't it? Because if you put the R into 4th, then the V could have gone 5th, R before V. And I guess Q would have had to be 3rd because it's one or the other. And oh no, that actually wouldn't work, would it? Because then T would have ended up stuck in 1 since 5 is already taken. And that would have left you with S and 2, and S and Q would not be able to go together. Here, let's just run it on paper. If we can actually just reuse the scenario. If we had R before V, and we tried to put R into 4, then that would have forced V into 5, which means Q would have had to go 3rd. And now, since T has to go into 1 or 5, T gets stuck in 1, and that leaves you with S in 2, and then Q and S can't be together. So this scenario doesn't really actually work, which means answer choice B is actually a good answer, because if we implemented this as a rule that R has to go before V, let's just recap, that would prevent R from going into 5 because it has to go before V. It would have prevented R from going into 3 because, well, it has to be Q or V there. But it also would have prevented R from going into 4 because if you tried to put R in 4 before V, it would have broken the game. So this rule, if implemented it, would have forced R to go into positions 1 or 2. Answer choice B is then the best answer here. Let's just quickly take a look at the rest of these answer choices. Answer choice C, V must go either 3rd or 4th. Now that is true. V had to go into 3 or 4. We did kind of indirectly deduce that. But would that get the job done? If you say that V is in 3 or 4, would that force R to go into 1 or 2? And yeah, it doesn't seem like it would, because hypothetically, if you put, say, a V over here, wouldn't that easily allow for R to go into number 4, for example? And then one of Q or S could go into 5 to keep them separate. And yeah, nothing else would break. Everything else would be good. T would go first with whoever's left over. So answer choice C, yes, it had to be true, but it wouldn't get the job done. It wouldn't force R into either 1 or 2. Answer choice D, the house in Q must be immediately before or after R. Now, so this one's a bit of an easier one to get rid of because this never had to be true. Q and R never had to go next to each other because we could have had Q over here in the second template. So if this never had to be true, that is a good enough reason to get rid of it. Answer choice E. If T is not 5th, then it would have to go immediately before R. Now, I suppose that is true because if T was not 5th, it would have had to go into 1, and then T would have to go immediately before R because that's the only other place R could go. So yes, this did always have to be true. But the real question again is, would this ensure that R is going to be stuck in 1 or 2? Now to be fair, E tells us that anytime T isn't 5, if it's not 5, it would have gone into 1 and then R goes into 2. And we end up with R in the first 2 positions. That's fine. But this rule doesn't actually tell you what happens if T was to go fifth. It only tells you what happens if T wasn't fifth. So this rule leaves open the possibility that maybe we could have T in number 5, in which case it doesn't tell you what to do with R. So perhaps in that scenario, you could have R in number 4, and then you could have Q in number 3 with S in number 1 to keep them separate, and then V could go between them, and that would work. So if we implemented answer choice E, it wouldn't be good enough. It would not ensure that R has to go into the first 2 positions. It would have allowed for T to go fifth and R to have gone 4th. So this would not be good enough. Best answer here, once again, is B.